segment 3, the third book within War, is entitled simply Love. Quote, "The Army has a certain interest in understanding what was going through Junta," am I pronouncing that correct?
Junta, yeah.
Junta. What was going through Junta's mind, because whatever was going through his mind helped save the entire unit from getting killed. Tell that story and then explain why the Army needed to be interested in what was going through his mind.
First platoon walked into an L-shaped ambush at night on the Abiskar and on the Gadigal Ridge, and they were facing massive firepower. The whole first squad was taken out in the first burst, and they in some ways they all should have died, except that they're so well trained. The only safety in a firefight is shooting more bullets than the other side is and forcing them to get their heads down. And once your head's down, you can't shoot back. And so it's a kind of contest of firepower in those first moments. And what you have to do as a soldier is ignore the fact you could get killed and concentrate on doing your job with whatever weapon you have. And that was what Junta and everyone in that platoon did when they got ambushed. And as a result, they lost 2 guys and several were wounded, but it could have been an absolute catastrophe, and it wasn't. And that was because of the incredible training that these guys have gone through.
When I asked about their allegiance to one another, they said they would unhesitatingly risk their lives for anyone in the platoon or company, but that the sentiment dropped off pretty quickly after that. Again, explain that.
There's a limit to how many people you can affiliate with. Within the core group, in the squad and in the platoon, I really think, and this happens regularly in war, there were guys who would have thrown themselves on a hand grenade to save the other guys in their squad. You can't have that kind of feeling, that kind of commitment, that kind of love, basically, for an infinite number of people. The limit seemed to be basically the platoon, extending a little bit. About
platoon is how many people?
About 35 guys.
All right. The squad is the smallest unit?
Squad's 9 guys.
All right. Squad, platoon.
Yeah.
Company is 100
about 150.
Got it.
After the sort of company level, it's pretty abstract. So there was a observation blimp that owned by the 173rd, by the brigade, that was in Asadabad, 20 miles away. It was doing something good. It was watching for enemy movement. It crashed during a thunderstorm. It was a brigade asset. It crashed during a thunderstorm, and when the guys in the platoon heard that, they all broke out in a cheer.
I can see indifference, but why were they cheering?
I don't know. I don't think they knew. It was like someone else's problem.
Okay, the Dunbar number. Tell us who Dunbar was and what the Dunbar number is.
Dunbar studied. He's a researcher who studied the frequency at which certain numbers of people occur in human society. Hunter-gatherer groups, corporate groups. I mean, people gather in groups of a certain size, and those sizes are not random. They if you plot them, they occur in certain clumps. And one of the really common numbers was 30 to 50 people. And that was from studying hunter-gatherer groups in our evolutionary past and also in tribes that are still existing. That's essentially the size of a platoon. The next jump up in group size that's very common in the world is around 150 people. That's a company. And you can sort of look at the way the military, not just the U.S., but many militaries, are divided into units, and you can see essentially our evolutionary origins in the sizes of groups that naturally cluster in different societies around the world.
Okay, so there's a sense, you can see particularly in the last third of the book titled Love, you're trying to understand how these men love each other enough to fight for each other. And one explanation is that in some way they're genetically programmed to.
One of the guys said, look, there are guys in the platoon who straight up hate each other, but we'd all die for each other. In Darwinian terms, that doesn't make much sense. Why would you die for a guy? I mean, dying for your children, maybe
Right.
your spouse, but for a guy you're not related to, another peer who will go on to have children and pass on his DNA, and you're going to die and you won't, it makes no sense. But what researchers have figured out is that in our evolutionary past, those groups of 30 to 50 people, you were related to most of the people in that group. So even if you didn't have your own children, you in a conflict, you were dying to protect your nephews, your cousins, your sisters' kids, and that it actually made sort of Darwinian sense to risk your life, sacrifice your life in protection of the group. So the guys in the platoon, in a kind of genetic heritage, in a sense of genetic heritage, they don't know they're not related to everyone else. They're functioning as if they were in a way that recaptures much of our evolutionary past.
Let me try two brief quotations from war, which seem to me to get at slightly different things. Here's quotation number one. Over and over again throughout history, men have chosen to die in battle with their friends rather than flee on their own and survive, number one. Number two, the defense of the tribe is an insanely compelling idea. Right? Those are both getting at love, at the attachment to the platoon or squad. But they're doing it in different ways. In that first quotation, you've got men have chosen to die. There's a kind of free will. It seems to me that you impute a kind, you wouldn't use this term, but there's a kind of nobility. There's something very attractive to this to you. And in the second quotation, it's insane. It's genetic programming. It's just a kind of primeval instinct. So which is it?
I think it's both. I mean, I think much of our behavior is derived from our genetic past, and it's further molded by cultural influences. In a firefight, you can hide behind a rock, or you can stand up and return fire and help protect everyone else. If you hide behind a rock, you're probably safer in that firefight. It won't do much for your standing in the platoon, but in that moment, you're probably safer. But over and over again, and I have video of this, guys will stand up and risk getting hit in order to do their job in the platoon and keep everyone safer. And in that sense, they're choosing to participate in a potentially suicidal act in order to safeguard everyone else. And that is a very profound choice that a person makes for the welfare of another person. Putting someone else's welfare above your own, it's at the heart of combat, but ironically, it's also at the heart of much of religious thought. There are real parallels between the two.